Chapter 20 of Mental Fascination. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Sandra Knight. www.sandraknight.net. Mental Fascination by William Walker Atkinson. The use of the mentative instruments. In the use of the eyes for the purpose of conveying mentative currents, you should always remember that the feeling is the real power behind these currents of force, and that the brain is the dynamo from which the currents originate. The brain, you know, is the great transformer or converter of the mentative energy, and acts just as does a dynamo in the direction of sending forth great waves of force. Consequently, if you wish to send out mentative currents for the purpose of inducing feeling in others, you must first have feeling generated in your mental dynamo. Valuable exercises. It will be well for two people to practice the eye exercises together, but in the absence of a friend in whom you have confidence, you may obtain excellent results by practicing before your friendly mirror. In either case, you must first arouse in your mind the feeling that you wish to express in mentative currents. Put your feeling into your glance and it will be felt. Exercise 1. Look into the eyes of your friend, or your own in the mirror, and then say mentally, "I am stronger than you." Throw into your glance as much of the feeling of strength as you can. Exercise 2. Say mentally, "I am more positive than you. I am outgazing you." Throwing as much positivity as possible into your gaze, the same being inspired, of course, by your feeling. Exercise 3. Say and feel, "You are afraid of me. I am making you feel my strength." Throwing the feeling into your gaze. Actual practice. After you have acquired the faculty of making your strength felt by the above exercises, you may use same upon other people when the occasion renders it advisable. If you are addressed by some person whom you think is trying to master you mentatively, or whose strong influence you wish to ward off, you may use the above method on him. As a rule, the person who is doing the talking has a slight advantage over the listener, all else being equal. The speaker is the more positive because he is expressing more energy. But you may counteract this, if you are the listener, by simply sending him a glance accompanied by the feeling of, "I scatter your force into bits. You cannot affect me." Points of practice. In resisting an attack of this sort, keep your mouth closed, with the teeth touching, for this bite denotes strength and firmness, and brings into play the parts of the brain manifesting these qualities, and thus charges your mentative currents with these feelings. At the same time, gaze firmly and steadily into the eyes of the other, using the fascinating gaze. I would bid you remember my remarks in Mental Magic about the person standing having the advantage of the one sitting. Avoid the sitting position when the other person is standing. Do not give him this advantage, but take it for yourself if you can. Mental commands and refusals. In speaking to persons and requesting them to do something, you should accompany the verbal request by a mental command. For instance, if you say, "You will do this for me, won't you?" This is the suggestive form of questioning, remember. You should accompany the question with the command, made mentally, with the proper glance, "You will do this." If you are the person requested to do something that you do not wish to do, you should answer, "No, I do not care to do this," or "I do not see my way clear to do it," or "I am unable to oblige you," etc., etc. But at the same time you must send the mental answer with its accompanying glance. "I will not do it, and you cannot make me." Certain dangerous teaching. A well-known teacher along these lines several years ago taught his pupils to gaze into the eyes of persons whom they wished to affect, at the same time saying mentally, "I am looking at you. I am looking through your eyes into your brain. My willpower is stronger than yours. You are under my control. I will compel you to do what I wish. You must do what I say. You shall do this. Do it at once." It will readily be seen that this will generate a powerful mentative current if there is a sufficiently strong feeling, will, and desire behind it. But right here I shall give you an antidote for this kind of influence. In all cases where you are attacked mentally in this way, you may dissolve the force by a positive denial. The positive denial. The positive denial is the powerful force that scatters into tiny bits the force directed against one. It is a destructive agent, just as is the positive statement a constructive or creative one. One who understands the scientific use of this destructive force may undo the mentative work of others to a surprising degree. Some day I shall have more to say regarding these two warring forces, along the broader lines of the entire subject of telementation, but at present I shall confine myself to their use in personal influence. By a strong, positive denial, you may scatter and disintegrate any mentative influence directed against you. This formula will give you a general idea of it. Suppose that you are repelling a statement such as given above. In that case, you should say mentally, accompanying it with the proper glance, with feeling back of it, "I deny positively your power over me. I deny it out of existence. I will not do your bidding. And I deny your right and power to command me. I deny your power, and I affirm my own." How to cultivate this power? You may cultivate this power to use the positive denial by practicing on an imaginary person whom you may suppose is trying to influence you. Imagine the strong, positive person before you, trying to influence you, and then start in to practice the positive denial on him, until you feel that you have beaten him off, and have sent him flying away in retreat. These imaginary mental battles will develop a great power of mentative resistance in you, and I advise you to strengthen yourself along these lines. If you feel that you are weak, you may improve on the above exercise by imagining that after your enemy is in full retreat, you follow him up and pour statement after statement into him, changing your position from a defender into an attacking force. The secret of effective speaking. In personal conversation with another, you will find it of the greatest value to see as clearly as possible a mental picture, chart or map, of what you are saying to him. By so doing, you will impress most forcibly upon his mind that which you wish him to see and feel. In this statement is compressed the secret of effective speaking. In the degree that you see and feel the thought that you are expressing in words will be the degree of impression made upon and mentative induction produced in the other person. The secret, of course, lies in the law of visualization as explained in Mental Magic and in this book. Psychological experiments. You may find an evidence of your increasing mentative influence by trying the physiological experiment of willing people to move this way or that way by gazing intently at them. In this experiment, it is not necessary for you to gaze into their eyes. Gazing at their back, preferably at the upper part of the neck at the base of the brain, will answer. You may try willing persons to look around on the street or in public places, etc., or you may will that they turn to the right or left of you when approaching each other on the street. Or, in stores, you may will that a certain clerk from out of a number will step forward to wait upon you. These and many similar experiments have an interest to the majority of students, and are accomplished with comparative ease after sufficient practice. The whole theory and practice consist of a steady gaze, and the mental command and will that the person will act so and so, together with the earnest expectation that they will obey the command, and the mental picture of their doing so. That is all there is to it. General advice. In the use of the eye as a mentative instrument, remember first, last, and all the time that desire and will are the phases of the mentative energy, and that in the degree that desire is kindled and will is exerted, so will be the power expressed by yourself and impressed upon others. Read Mental Magic over a number of times until you have fully grasped the underlying principles. Then reread the present book and commit its exercises and instructions to memory. Then practice frequently and perfect yourself in the methods pointed out until you render them second nature. You will be conscious of a gradual growth and development along the lines of mentative power and influence. The flame of electromagnetic power once lit will never die out. Tend the flame carefully, keep the wick trimmed clean, and fill the lamp with oil, and it will ever burn bright and emit heat and light and power. The magnetic touch. The last mentative instrument mentioned in a previous chapter is the touch. There was a time in my early stages of experimentation and psychological research when I laughed at the idea of the touch playing any real part in the work of mentative influence. Of course, I saw the effect of the touch in certain phases of psychological work, but I believed that it was all merely suggestion. But I soon learned that the touch was really a most potent instrument of mentative energy. I now explain it by the idea of the nerves being like the wires upon which the electric current travels. The brain is the dynamo, or converter of the energy, and while the latter travels in waves and currents without any wires, just as does the wave of the wireless telegraph, still, if there is a wire to be had, then it follows the lines of least resistance and takes the advantage of the nerve wire. Certain parts of the body have nerve cells very highly developed in them, and are in fact miniature brains. In the cases of some persons of sensitive and trained touch, there exist little clusters of nerve cells at the ends of the fingers that act like miniature brains. The lips are also highly developed in this respect, as the well-known phenomena of kissing evidences. The fingers and hand are excellent polar mediums for conveying the mentative energy that pours down over the nerves from the brain, and through which it passes to the other person. How to use the hands. The use of the touch of the hands as a channel for conveying mentative energy depends greatly upon the development of the hands by the individual. Those who understand this matter develop the conductivity of the hands by treating them as follows. Think of your hands as excellent conductors of mentative energy, and imagine that you can feel the energy pouring down the nerves of your arms and out your hands, obeying your will when you shake hands with people. You will soon develop your hands to such a degree that some sensitive persons will actually feel the current passing into them. Always accompany the passage of the current with the thought or feeling that you wish to induce in the other person, just as you do when you use the fascinating gaze. In fact, the gaze and the hand clasp should be used together, when possible, for by doing so you double the effect. The magnetic hand clasp. When you shake hands with a person, throw mind and feeling into it, and do not fall into the mechanical, lifeless method so common among people. Throw your feeling down to your hand, and at the same time make a mental command or statement appropriate to the case. For instance, grasp the person's hand with feeling and interest, saying mentally at the same time, "You like me." Then, when you draw your hand away, if possible, let your fingers slide over the palm of his hand in a caressing manner, allowing his first finger to pass between your thumb and forefinger, close up in the crotch of the thumb. Practice this well until you can perform it without thinking of it. That is, make it your natural way of shaking hands. You will find that this method of shaking hands will open up a new interest in people toward you, and in other ways you will discover its advantage. You will never know a fascinating person who did not have a good hand clasp. It is a part of the fascinating personality. Other uses of the hands. There are many persons well grounded on the psychological principles underlying mental fascination who use the hands as a medium for mentative energy without shaking hands. For instance, they sit near the other person and place their hands so that their fingers will point toward him, at the same time willing that the current flow through the fingers and toward the other. They also use their hands in conversation so as to have the tips of their fingers pointing toward the other. This last plan becomes highly effective when used with the appropriate gestures, for it is akin to the mesmeric pass of the hands. In this connection, I would say beware of the person who is always trying to put his hands on you. Beware of the pawing over process. Avoid it in the ordinary way if possible, or else deliberately practice the positive denial toward the person, holding the idea and mental statement that, I deny the power of your magnetism, I scatter it by my denial. A warning to women. In concluding this chapter, I would especially caution young women, and older ones for that matter, against allowing men to be familiar with them in the direction of holding hands, or similar practices. Not only does this familiarity breed contempt, but there are good psychological reasons why the practice is to be condemned. You have seen what part the hands play in magnetizing, as it is called, and is it not clearly discernible how one may use the hands in this petting and all that sort of thing in order to psychologically affect another person? I am not speaking now of the caresses indulged in by honorable true lovers, for all the talk in the world would not change that sort of thing. But I am alluding to the indiscriminate pawing over on the part of strange men that some young girls allow. There is a danger in this sort of thing, and I want you to know it. If you have daughters or young female relatives, warn them against this thing and tell them the reasons why. A caution to men. And the same thing is true of the man who is always patting other men on the shoulder, or resting his arm around them, or else taking hold of them in a friendly, caressing way during a conversation. Such men may not know the psychology of the thing, but they have found out that this sort of patting up makes other men more impressionable and amenable to their influence, and so they practice it. Make them stop it, either by moving away or by positive denial. The protective armor. Now, once more, remember the power of this positive denial as a disperser and disintegrator of adverse influence. If this book taught you nothing else, it would still be worthwhile to you because of this one point of instruction. For this positive denial is a mentative armor that will protect you, a mentative sword that will defend you, a mentative lightning flash that will clear the mental atmosphere. Learn the secret of positive statement and positive denial, and you are clad in an invulnerable armor and armed with the weapon of strength. And so you may, like the warrior bold, go gaily to the fray. May the victory be yours. End of Chapter 20. Use of Mentative Instruments. Recording by Sandra Knight. www.sandraknight.net